And with that, it is 11 a.m., so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us to learn more about our crop animal systems request for applications. This is an informational webinar where we will be going through the different and various components of our RFA and answer some of your questions in the chat function or in the, Q&A function. We'll also have some frequently asked questions and answer some of your questions live. To give you a better understanding, I'll go to our agenda slide, which is next. But before that, I wanted to quickly run through a few housekeeping items to demonstrate how today will flow. So this webinar will be approximately 1 hour long. Attendees, your microphones will be muted for the duration of the webinar, but we encourage you to ask questions in our Q&A specific function that we have in the chat. They'll be read by myself and answered during our live Q&A time at the end of this presentation. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted on the webinar's event page on the FFAR website. There's a nice little QR code here, which will take you directly to that, which will also be shown later on in the presentation. Also, feel free, because of the collaborative nature of this RFA, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat to connect with other researchers and or organizations, or to just say hello. Thank you again for joining. To run through today, I'm going to introduce who we have as our panelist speakers. I'm going to then pass it over to Dr. Jasmine Bruno to give you an overview of FFAR and who we are and what we do as an organization. I'm then going to take back over and introduce this specific request for applications and give you a better understanding of what we're looking for, and walk through some specific points of the RFA. We then have some frequently asked questions, and then that's the time at the end is for your attendee live question and answer. So please, once again, use the Q&A function, and our panelists in the background, our FFAR team, will be working hard to either answer them directly to you today and or reserve them for our live Q&A time at the end. Without further ado, my name is Nikki Dutta. I'm a scientific program officer here at the Foundation for Food and Agriculture Research, or as we like to say, FFAR. I am joined today by a robust FFAR team. So thank you for joining Dr. Kathy Monkfold, who is our scientific program director of our crops production systems, Dr. Jasmine Bruno, who is the scientific program director of our animal production systems, my other counterpart, our scientific program officer, Ryan Camella, Marina Middleton, who is our grants officer, Michelle Olger, who is our communications officer, Ryan Connolly, our other communications officer, and Lauren Hershey, our director of strategic partnerships. So thank you all for joining us today. A quick shout out, Magda Galindo is our director of grants management. And without further ado, Jasmine, will you tell us a little bit about FFAR?
Absolutely. Thank you, Nikki. Such a pleasure to be on this webinar with all of you today. So I'm going to briefly share a little bit about FFAR. We were established in the 2014 Farm Bill with this eye towards really connecting funders, researchers, and farmers to fund research that pioneers the next frontier of ag innovation. Next slide. Great. And our mission, so how we do that, we're aiming to build collaborative partnerships, typically public-private partnerships that really support the research that is needed to address the most complex and critical challenges that are facing today's food and agriculture. A little bit about how we do that, or what we like to call the FFAR factor. we look to complement USDA's research agenda. So really identifying and filling those critical gaps that we can find. For instance, an example of this is our ROAR program, where we look to rapidly deploy funds in response to emerging pests and pathogens in animal and crop agriculture. So seeing that that was a need and then being able to respond to that critical gap. And then, of course, we are looking to increase the investment in research efforts. So for every dollar of the Farm Bill money that we deploy, we look to match that with at least one non-federal dollar. So really amplifying that initial public research investment. And then we really have an eye towards focusing on actionable science that moves research from the lab into the field. Next slide, Nikki. So last year, FAR celebrated our 10-year anniversary. And in that 10-year anniversary celebration, we released our research strategy for 2024-2028 that charted our path in the years to come. And in that research strategy, we identified 4 key priority areas that we're working in. So thriving production systems, sustaining vibrant agroecosystems, bolstering healthy food systems, and then strengthening the scientific workforce. So the Crop-Animal RFA that we're speaking about today sits within the production systems team. Prior to that strategy refresh effort at FAR, the crop and the animal portfolio had sat rather separately, but really being able to recognize that there's a deep interconnection of crop and animal systems, and that there's an opportunity for us to advance both of these systems for greater impact. Out of that need, developed the production systems team that we have here today, and then ultimately this RFA that we've launched. Specifically in our production systems team, we have 4 key areas that we're aiming to fund research in: work that advances crop resilience and productivity, efforts that really advance the integration of animal health, welfare, and productivity. And then third, supporting research that advances economically viable systems. And by that, we mean systems that are profitable now and systems that are profitable into the future for producers. And then work that supports agricultural stewardship. So cultivating efficient crop and animal systems that protect and conserve our natural resources. So that's a little bit about our Thriving Production Systems team, FAR, and how we came to this Crop-Animal RFA. So I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Dr. Kathy Munkhold, to speak more on the Crop-Animal RFA.
Thank you, Jasmine. So I'm going to walk you through the Crop-Animal Systems RFA and also include some in and out of scope research areas. But at a high level, FAR is seeking to fund projects that foster innovation with the potential for transformative impact to crop and animal systems. And here we're really focusing on that and, where crop and animal experts can come together to advance crop and animal systems. Next slide, please. So what is this RFA aiming to accomplish? Well, much of the research on our food supply has tended to focus on crops or animal systems independently. And so a goal of ours, just like we have done within FAR, is to drive collaboration, and in this case, drive collaborative research between scientists in these areas. We also know that crop and animal systems are deeply connected, whether they're existing on the same land or apart. And so another goal of ours is to drive a systems approach to research in these areas. So how can we advance both crop and animal systems together for greater impact? Well, we think that it's through funding collaborative, integrative, and systems research. Next slide, please. So I wanted to start, before I got into some of the examples of supported research areas that were provided in the RFA, I wanted to start by letting you know that any area of research that advances crop and animal systems that aligns with the themes that Jasmine described earlier would be in scope. And again, those themes are crop resilience and productivity, integrated animal health, welfare, and productivity, economically viable systems, and agricultural stewardship. So we did list some categories that we thought could help get the ideas flowing, and those included resource-efficient animal feed, improved animal nutrition, bioaccumulation of environmental contaminants and how they flow through our crop and animal systems, and ultimately can end up in the human food supply, efficient cycling of nutrients between crops and livestock, as well as optimization of rotations of crops and grazing systems. And finally, the incorporation of circular agricultural principles in general. So again, these are just some ideas, and we're really looking forward to the creativity that exists out there in the scientific community to bring to this larger topic. Next slide, please. So we do have some areas of research that are out of scope for this RFA. The first is, again, we're really focused on collaborative and integrated research. So research that addresses only crops or only animal systems, but not both, would be out of scope. And similarly, teams that bring expertise in only one of these areas would also be out of scope. We do have some existing programs at FFAR that cover some areas of this research, and for this purpose, those will be out of scope as well. They are the Greener Cattle Initiative, which focuses on reducing enteric methane emissions from dairy and beef cattle production systems, and the International Consortium for Antimicrobial Stewardship in Agriculture, which focuses on the responsible use of antibiotics. So you can learn more about both of these initiatives if you have any questions on our website. And finally, FFAR is an organization that is driven to fund research that advances the U.S. food and agriculture system. So research that's not relevant to the U.S. would be out of scope. But with that said, global research that also can benefit the U.S. would be in scope. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Nikki to walk you through some of the eligibility criteria. Thank you.
You're muted, Nikki.
You're muted.
Thank you so much, Kathy. Eligibility. Am I eligible? All domestic and international higher education institutions, nonprofit and for-profit organizations, and even U.S. government-affiliated research agencies are applicable to apply for this research program. As Kathy mentioned, proposals must identify a clear benefit to our U.S. food and agricultural system and a clear pathway to deploy this technology or solution to our U.S. farms. Prioritizes research that delivers broader benefits across geographies and production systems. So again, we do welcome those that have a global lens to research. FFAR will not support research that addresses a challenge primarily limited to another country or region outside the U.S., or where the technology or solution is not broadly relevant to the United States. Some general award information. This research call is up to $4 million total in US dollars for our Crops Animal Systems RFA. Individual awards will range between $300,000 to $1 million in FFAR funds, and this is to be matched in supplemental match funds, whether in kind or cash match. A maximum of 10% of the total award may be used for indirect costs, as outlined in our FFAR's indirect cost policy, and projects must have a planned duration ranging between 24 and 40 months. For further information, we do encourage you to look at the RFA document located on our website. And when it comes to excess match, I'll be talking about that in our next slide about match information, but excess match is welcome, but will not influence potential success of an application. And we do expect budgets to be reasonably commensurate with your research topic area as well. So speaking of match, we do require all applications to supplement their FFAR fund request with match contributions. Match contributions must be equal or greater to the FFAR funding request listed on the pre-application and full application components. And matching funds must come from an entity other than the US federal government. At least 50% of the matching funds must be cash match, per FFAR's definition of cash. The remainder may be supplemented with an in-kind contribution. Now, again, fortunately for this call, we are unique in the circumstance in which two organizations have come forward to be an option for match, and these include United Soybean Board and Dairy Management, Inc. So I'm going to briefly introduce Dr. Keenan Roberts, who is here on our call. Dr. Keenan Roberts is the Executive Vice President of Strategy at United Soybean Board. He develops, leads, and facilitates USB's strategic direction. He works to ensure high impact and returns on strategic investments throughout the USB investment portfolio. Dr. McRoberts was raised on a farm and ranch in western Nebraska and is passionate about farmer-driven investments that can help shape the future of the U.S. soybean industry. He received his bachelor's in biochemistry from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln and went on to earn both his master's in international agriculture and rural development and PhD in animal science from Cornell University. Prior to joining USB, Dr. Roberts was the Director of Global Strategy and Business Development at the American Soybean Association's WISH, W-I-S-H-H program. He has also worked with the U.S. Peace Corps in Nicaragua as an agricultural extension specialist, technical specialist, and trainer. So without further ado, I welcome Dr. Keenan Roberts to join us and say how USB is uniquely suited to provide optional match funding for their research call.
Yeah, thank you, Nikki, and good morning, everyone. Definitely thrilled about the opportunity to partner with FFAR on this work on behalf of soybean farmers here in the U.S. USB is really interested in things that can create future product demand for soy products, especially on the animal ag side of things, both domestically and abroad, whether that be directly or indirectly. And a lot of our work on the production side of soy is designed to improve product placement and create further demand as well. So it sits nicely in a collaborative space relative to the priorities of this RFP, and love seeing all the interest. This is one of the largest Zoom calls I've ever been on, so certainly a lot of interest here, and we're fielding a number of calls from folks that are interested in potentially partnering here. So I look forward to continuing that and to the partnerships that arise that help us move toward more of an integrated systems approach to demand creation for crop and livestock systems. Thank you, Nikki.
Yeah, thank you. We're pleased to have you join us today, and we're pleased for your interest and support in this research call as well. Our next optional match funder support comes from Dr. Tim Kurt from Dairy Management, Inc. I know he's traveling today, so I don't think he's on the call as of right now. So I'll read his bio and some of DMI's talking points. So Dr. Kurt is the Senior Vice President of Environmental Research Strategy and Group Lead at Dairy Management, Inc. His responsibilities focus on leading strategy and oversight at the Chekhov's Environmental Research Program and developing and executing plans to help the dairy industry achieve its 2050 environmental stewardship goals. As a part of this role, Dr. Kurt develops strategies and collaborations to address critical research needs, support dairy farmers with science-based data and results, and helps advance the U.S. dairy industry's position as a key player in global sustainable food systems. Dr. Kurt leads a team of expert scientists and sustainability practitioners who oversee large-scale measurement, modeling, and research projects that include life cycle assessments, techno-economic assessments for emerging agricultural technologies, and fundamental topics in environmental and biological sciences. He has over 20 years of experience working in biomedical and agricultural research, building programs, and driving progress on issues of economic importance to the industry and society at large. Dr. Kurt is not here, I don't think. So Dairy Management Inc. is unique with partnering similar to USB, as the environmental research team conducts measurement, modeling, and research to enable and demonstrate the U.S. dairy industry's environmental progress. Their interests span from crop and feed production through to animal, with priorities that align with the collective industry's 2050 environmental stewardship goals of achieving greenhouse gas neutrality, optimizing water use while maximizing recycling, and improving water quality. So both of Dr. Keenan Roberts and Dr. Tim Kurt's information is up on the screen. It's also included in the RFA documentation. The onus is on the research applicant to collect the match funding support prior to the full application stage. So we do encourage you, if your research aligns and you think it's well suited for either USB or DMI, to reach out to our match funder support, the options that we have today. Some key dates. So the opportunity opened April 30th. Your first deadline, if you're interested, is June 11th, 2025 by 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Full application invitations will be released on July 16th with a subsequent deadline of September 10th. And I'm going to quickly talk through some of the application process, starting with our pre-application submission. So the main takeaways from this is the pre-application submission must be through FFAR's grants management system. All information will be treated as confidential and private. And the most innovative and rigorous projects with significant potential for advancing our research call and FFAR's mission will be invited to submit a full application. Only those that have submitted through FFAR's grants management system will be eligible for a full application invitation through FFAR. The major components of our pre-application, which is listed in our RFA, would be the pre-proposal project description and preliminary budget, the budget of which you're estimating the project to be, but also some of your matching funder information. Please list any funding partners and indicate if their contributions are secured, still under discussion, or a potential. Moving forward with the invited full application, again, we have several required components that are outlined in our RFA documentation, with some subsequent required attachment documentations, along with some optional attachments. Again, all of this is outlined in our RFA, and if you have any specific questions on these, please do not hesitate to reach out to us after the call. Our application review process is in 2 stages, similar to the invitation process. So we'll have a review process for the pre-application submitted. Again, once we go through the pre-applications, on that July date, you'll have an understanding of whether or not you were selected to move forward to our full application stage. And then our full application stage will undergo a 3-stage peer review process, with each submission assigned to an external review panel of at least 3 subject matter experts. Then FFAR's internal priority area matching to the designated research topic at hand with our scientific staff here. And then final approval will be made by our executive team. Our evaluation criteria is segmented into 4 main categories. And these include novelty, innovation, originality, technical merit and feasibility, anticipated outcomes and outputs, and partnerships. Again, the full details of each criterion is listed in our RFA. And without further ado, I welcome Marina to join us and talk us through how to submit your application to FFAR's grants management portal. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Wow, we have a very exciting Q&A session happening on the side, so I apologize if we haven't gotten to your question just yet, and also I'm hoping to answer some of them live now. The first question that I really want to answer is, how do you create an application in the grants management system for this RFA opportunity? The short answer is there is a link in the RFA document that you can download from the Open Opportunities page. It is under the section called How to Apply. It's section 5 for those of you who want to jump straight to it. You will also be able to access a create a new pre-application link, as well as an access a saved application link on the Open Opportunity page within the next day or so. Let's see. There is also a section where you can access a whole bunch of resources, both specific to this RFA and general resources for applicants interested in applying to FFAR funding opportunities. What we're looking at on the screenshot on the slide is sort of our go-to dashboard of applicant resources. These are the best places to look if you are trying to figure out what to do next when you are applying for funding to FFAR. It has a quick overview of how we work and how funding works. It also has an explanation of how matching funding works. You'll see it on the right side, that link. That's going to be sort of your best friend when you are determining what counts as matching funds, what is appropriate. I'll also give like a high-level overview before I stop talking. The other thing that you're going to want from there is the FFAR office hours, which is that gray box on the bottom right of the screenshot we're all looking at. That lists the applicant-specific office hours where I and my colleagues on the grants team make ourselves available for an hour every month to just answer questions as they arise from anyone who feels like they have something they need to figure out. We're also available via email at grants@foundationfar.org, which is an email address you'll see on the Open Opportunities page and on the RFA document. So we're very available. We try to answer our questions as quickly as possible, especially from applicants. And for this RFA specifically, because there's so much fun activity around it, we're also going to be having an office hours session for how to use the grants management platform and how to prepare budgets and understand matching funds, stuff like that, on May 28th at noon Eastern time. It'll last until 1 p.m. Eastern time. The registration link for that office hours is going to be on this RFA's Open Opportunities page on our website by tomorrow. Let's see. Other important things that we need to answer live. I've gotten a couple questions about matching funds, both when do we need them? What even is it? What's cash versus in kind? So the important things to know about matching funds. Thanks, Nikki, for rolling us along. The important things to know about matching funds is that we do need prospective matching funds identified by the time you submit your pre-application. That just means that you have a rough idea of who you are speaking to and you're letting us know, where those conversations are at. By the time you submit the full application, we need that matching funding verified. There is a templated letter available on our website. You'll be directed there as part of filling out your full application. That templated letter will happen on the matching funder's letterhead. It will be signed by the matching funder. It is a non-binding, it is meant to be very approachable, but that document simply confirms that the institution that you've listed as a matching funder is aware of the support that you're describing and is aware of the project that you're submitting to us. Let's see. The other question that I've been seeing a lot in the Q&A is the difference between in-kind and cash. What might be in-kind, what might be cash, especially with projects that relate to animals. There is definitely some conversation around when is access to an animal in-kind or cash support. The definitions on the matching guidelines document, which is one of our there we go, matching funding. We do require one-to-one matching funding from non-federal sources. The definitions in the matching funds guidelines are definitely the best place to go for your first like high-level questions. The short rule that I like to tell people is that in-kind support is any support you're getting that is not currency. So that's going to be donations, pro bono professional time, access to something that would normally cost money where the fee has been waived. Anything where someone is moving currency from one bank account to another, we would consider cash match. Cash match does need to be at least 50% of the matching funds that you've recruited for this project. So it's very helpful to have as much cash match as possible just to keep that ratio clear. We do consider salary to be cash match. We do consider fees paid on behalf of the project to be cash match. And then indirect costs, which I can talk about in a little bit more detail, by necessity come out of cash match. And I know that I threw a whole bunch of stuff out there that was question and answer related and not necessarily slide related. So I'm going to get back on topic now. We have policies and guidance that are available on our website for further review, but just at a very high level. We do have an intellectual property policy that we encourage people to review as you are preparing your application. We also have an indirect cost policy that boils down to 10% of your total project can be directed towards indirect cost. That rate must be applied equally to FAR funds and matching funds. The budget template that you are using when you fill out your full application does that calculation for you automatically. If you run into any issues with the budget template, or if you have any questions about intellectual property, indirect costs, or the way that matching funds work, I really encourage you to reach out to the grants team. If we can't answer your question very quickly, we can definitely find you someone who can. So we're here to be a resource. And I want to just double check that I haven't missed any of our Q&As because there's a whole bunch of them. Okay, I think we're good. And I apologize for doing that a little bit out of order. I got very excited about the office hours. Re-upping the fact that the office hours are a fantastic resource, especially if you are new to FAR or new to FAR applications. You're able to ask things in an informal setting and just make sure that, if other people are asking questions, you're hearing the answers. So I encourage you to register for the one on May 28th that is specific to this RFA. Right. I think that's it for the slide. There we go.
Thank you so much, Marina. That was great. And yes, I do see our Q&A is very active. So if you have further questions, please type them in there. Again, hoping that some of these questions are going to be answered right now. Our first question, I'm going to walk through some of our frequently asked questions for you before answering your questions live. Can one institution submit more than one application? Yes. An institution may submit multiple applications for this specific opportunity. Just please be cautious of the eligibility requirements outlined. Do I have to secure match funds before applying? Matching funds that are equal to or greater than FAR's request are required for this opportunity. As Marina said, match may be prospective at the time of the pre-application, but must be certified at the time of the full application submission. At least 50% of the match must be cash, and up to 50% may be in kind. And Marina did a wonderful job of walking us through that we have some forms and policies of indirect cost match on our applicant resources webpage. So I encourage you to look at that for more information. What is the policy of indirect costs? Up to 10% of the total award, project funds award may be used for indirect costs. FAR's indirect cost allotment is an overall allotment from the total funds requested, known as the total project costs. Once again, referencing the open office hours, our grant-related open office hours. If you have any specific budget questions, our team is ready to assist. What should I do if my research idea is the right fit? or excuse me, what should I do if I'm not sure if my research idea is the right fit? Please contact us. Ryan and myself are fielding a lot of emails right now. But I think also this webinar gave you a better idea of what's in scope and what's out of scope, really stressing the collaborative nature of the team, of a crops animal systems team, and knowing that the research topic must be relevant to both agricultural systems. I have more grant related questions. What should I do? Please feel free to contact our FAR grants management team at grants@foundationfar.org. We also encourage you to register for one of the open office hours that we have for you. Again, there is a May 28th, a specialized May 28th office hours that will be open and eligible for registration as of tomorrow on the specific crop animal RFA webpage. So please keep your eyes peeled for that. And that's a good time before the pre-application submission deadline. We also have subsequent dates should you have questions further along in the process. And with that, that kind of concludes the presentation of this webinar. I'm going to move into some of our live question and answer, but I really appreciate everybody for joining today's call. If you have any specific grants related questions, please contact our grants team. And if you have any specific questions related to the RFA, you may contact me, Nikki Dutta, at ndutta@foundationfar.org, or my colleague, Ryan Camella at rcamella@foundationfar.org. Thank you so much. With that, I'm gonna lower my screen and move into some of the live Q&A that we have. So I think the first one may have already just been answered, but I'll ask it again. Jasmine, can you have multiple organizations contribute or apply for this research call? And then can you have multiple organizations contribute to the match?
Yeah, great question. The answer is yes. So an organization can submit multiple applications to this call. And that can be the PI can have multiple applications, or the PI can serve as a PI and then also a researcher on another application. So we're very comfortable with that. And then, yes, we also are open to multiple organizations offering the match. So maybe one organization isn't bringing the full match. We're more than happy to have multiple organizations come together to be able to offer the match. In fact, we see significant opportunity to facilitate further collaboration through that model. So thank you for that question.
Great. Kathy, I'm gonna bump this one to you. Are there specific crops or animals that are considered of the highest priority for this RFA?
Yeah, thanks. Great question. For the crops that are available for this RFA, we're really open to any that are going to be agriculturally relevant to the United States. With that said, we're often looking for the research that has the potential for the largest impact, but this can be done in different ways. So it can be over a cropping system that is really large in scale, or for smaller systems, there could be opportunities to leverage the research to multiple systems or across multiple regions. So really open in the crop space. But I'm going to ask Jasmine to weigh in on the animals that are of interest.
Yeah, absolutely. Similarly, it has to be animal agriculture for it to be eligible for this RFA. I will say for our in-scope animals, typically we have been focusing on dairy, beef, aquaculture, poultry, meat and eggs, and swine. For this RFA call, we are open to all kind of encompassing animal agriculture. I do want to specify specifically aquaculture because we've had several questions around this. So for instance, wild caught species are not in scope. It has to, again, be raised aquaculture for it to be in scope for this call.
Thank you both. Kind of stemming off of that, does FAR prioritize projects that use existing technologies in new systems, or are novel technologies preferred?
I can jump in on this one.
Yeah.
Sure. So I think both are really important, and so we would consider both. You can imagine that there are some technologies that have been somewhat developed but haven't made it over that hurdle to be implemented in agriculture. So this is part of FAR's focus on translational research, really seeing the technologies that we develop with our funding get into the hands of farmers and benefiting farmers and consumers. But on the other hand, it's really exciting to develop new technologies that answer really specific gaps or challenges within the agricultural system. So both are in scope, in my opinion.
Thank you. And let's see. Kathy, this is a specific question. Can you provide references or details on this research area incorporation of circular agricultural principles?
Yeah, and I saw another question in the chat regarding regenerative agriculture, so I might kind of combine both of those into this answer. So I do think that there's some the question was whether regenerative agriculture was in scope, and I do think that there is some overlap between regenerative agriculture and circular agricultural principles. And then I'll also state that we are interested in agricultural stewardship of the land and the resources that are required for agricultural systems. So in that sense, yes, regenerative agriculture would be in scope. To the question on more details about circular agricultural principles, some that we're interested in would include the efficient cycling of nutrients between crops and livestock, transforming waste into resources, maximizing the use of byproducts within the system, as well as optimizing land use. I realize there are a lot of definitions that are floating around out there, but this is some additional information that I hope will help.
Thank you so much. There's a question on the level of detail around the budget. I actually will welcome either Marina or Lauren to answer this question, but Marina, you may be best suited, yeah.
Hey. So when you are preparing the full application, you will be prompted to use the FAR budget template, which has all of the line items and categories of funding laid out that we need to know about in order to understand your project. The funding falls into 4 main categories. There's personnel, which is subdivided into key personnel like co-PIs, who might be the people that you co-author or might be responsible for, sub-sites, as well as additional personnel, which is where you would put people like grad students, postdocs, administrative staff. The next section is equipment. That's anything over $5,000 that you need to purchase, a combine harvester, a new piece of, I don't know, electron microscope maybe. The next is travel to conferences. Those are pretty straightforward. And then the last one is sort of additional direct costs. That one's sort of the open-ended, anything that's not overhead. Most capital expenses we would consider to be indirect costs because they mostly fall under the overhead definition from our side of things. If you want more information about what we define as indirect costs, the matching guidelines document also has a section on indirect costs. We're also very happy to answer that question via email. Before I go off mic, I saw another question that might be relevant to us, and I apologize for scrolling through to make sure that I actually capture it. How much deviation in actual expenses from the proposed amounts is allowable for particular category of funds before request for modification is necessary? Which is a lot of words to say how much variation in spending is allowable for active FAR awards. That's something that we can talk about in more detail once you've been selected for funding. But the short answer is, depending on the size of the project, it's either 10% of the category or 25% of the annual amount. And there is guidance online for the grantee resource section that talks in more detail about when a budget modification is necessary. And again, we're very available to answer questions. If you are selected for funding, we will be helping you set up all of that. And those are so far all I see.
Thank you, Marina. One last question for you. Is there a required start date for the projects?
There's not a required start date for the projects itself, but we do anticipate projects to begin in mid-2026, which I believe is what's said on the RFA. If you are trying to navigate when matching funds become available to you versus when FAR funds become available to you, we do expect matching funds to become available to you at the same time as the FAR funds. I don't mean they need to hit the bank account the same day, but I do mean that if you have a project start date, we expect to see the same start date on your matching funds. Of course, things come up, so please ask us questions about the specifics of your project if you have a very specific situation that you need to walk through with us. But we expect to see consistent start dates for the match available and the project funds itself. FAR funding won't be dispersed to awardees until the agreement documentation is signed. That's a process that can take anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 months, depending on, legal teams and particulars. And then dispersing the actual physical check can sometimes take another 2 to 4 weeks after that because we confirm payment details to make sure we're sending it to the right people. So that's sort of the timing on money from our end.
Great. And sorry, one last question for you, Marina. While we have you, you mentioned up to 10% of the total award may be used for indirect costs. That is only accounting for funds coming from FAR, but not from match funds, correct?
That is incorrect.
Okay.
So if, for example, you ask for $1 million from FAR and you go out and find $1 million of matching funds, you have a $2 million project. Of that $2 million, up to $20,000 can, is that math right? $200,000 can be considered indirect costs. And that rate will be applied equally to the matching funds that you've found elsewhere and to the FAR funds that you've applied for. So that would be $100,000 of our million and $100,000 of the match that you went and got.
Thank you so much for clarifying. Wanting to switch topics a little bit, I like this question. Maybe Jasmine or Kathy could answer it. What about emerging diseases, emerging but less common crops that we're trying to get into the market for either fruit, nut production, and or silvopasture? Would these types of crops be considered? They would certainly have regional geographic relevance, and are forward looking and have a climate mitigation potential.
So again, we're really open to any crops that can be part of the U.S. agricultural system. And I think, again, the question makes reference to maybe multi-regional aspects of these crops. So that could help, grow the impact of what can be done on a smaller scale. But in general, our crops portfolio welcomes diversifying the different crops that can be grown by farmers in the U.S. and provide them with perhaps new options and more economic benefit.
Thank you.
And I guess I'll just follow up that with adding, of course, there needs to be an animal component to that cropping system, as we've mentioned multiple times.
Thanks, Kathy. And then along a similar route, what is FAR's definition of a systems approach? For example, some would define it as a closed loop system. Others would say that complex feedbacks are accounted for, including outside exogenous variable, excuse me. Jasmine?
Sure, yeah. So really, when we think about this systems approach, not looking at it hyper focusing on an individual component of the system, but rather recognizing that there are interconnected elements and relationships in a system that impact one another. So really understanding that if we pull lever A, it has an impact on element B, for instance. And so recognizing that relationship. And then secondly, for our thinking around systems, very much recognizing that there are interconnected feedback loops as well. So again, not hyper-focusing on one component of a system, but rather acknowledging the complex interconnections of different components and the feedback loops within those.
Great.
Yeah.
Kathy, does this call support? There's a little bit of echo. Does this call support research on orphan crops?
Yes, same answer as before, as long as it's relevant to the US agriculture system, we would consider it. And again, building that potential for impact in different ways would be important here, as well as the integration with animal systems.
You guys are hard at work in the chat function answering these questions. I'm very impressed. Is there anything else that I am missing from the team that should be answered on this call?
I'd like to answer the equipment question.
Sure, Marina, would you read it
Absolutely.
out and then answer it?
Absolutely. So the question is, could you define what might fall under the equipment category? For example, is it limited to equipment as in tractors, haying equipment, lab equipment, or do things such as fencing, water infrastructure, etc., also fall into the equipment category? This is a great question, especially for this RFA specifically, because FAR, as a federally funded nonprofit, cannot finance construction work. And the definition between construction versus equipment installation can occasionally get a little bit tricky. I strongly encourage you to look at the matching guidelines document that we directed you to. I also strongly encourage you to check out the CFR because that's where we get our definitions from. If you have a specific situation, please reach out to grants@foundationfar.org for a more specific answer. In general, something like fencing would be considered a construction cost. Water infrastructure could go either way depending on the specifics of your project. But in general, it is absolutely something to run past the science team and the grants team to make sure that it doesn't fall under our definition of construction, which we are barred from supporting.
Thank you so much. One of the last questions I'll ask is for the match component, if they have a farm or on field and they're using support as in live animals or just the size of a farm, does this matter? Does the scope matter?
Does the scope of the farm supporting the match matter?
Yeah, go ahead, Jasmine.
Yeah, I think this actually might relate to some method and methodological questions I'm seeing in the chat. So first of all, I think there's questions around whether or not we will privilege kind of on-farm work or modeling, mathematical modeling work. And I want to say for us, it is most critical that you're asking a question that is a critical research need that advances one of our 4 priorities, which again is the crop resilience and productivity, the integrated animal health, welfare, and productivity, the economic viability, and the agricultural stewardship. So no, we will consider all kind of methods and methodological approaches as relevant. And then similarly, when you're talking about the on-farm work, we have to ensure that the geographic location and the size and the scope of your experimental unit or station fits the research question. But as long as that's the case and it enables you to answer the research question you have presented, we are very open to geographically where that is or what kind of farm size or scope you're doing the experiment on. So I hope I answered a couple broad questions there.
Yes, and I think you articulated the question better than I previously stated. So thank you, Jasmine. Anything else that I'm missing from the team? Again, thank you all for your questions. I'm going to reshare my last slide here, which I hope I will do correctly. Just in terms of if you have any further questions that are grants related, please reach out to our grants management team. They can be reached at grants@foundationfar.org. You can also attend one of the open office hours that we referenced previously. If you have any specific questions relating to this Crop Animal Systems RFA, please send Ryan or myself an email, or both of us an email at our respective contacts shown now. And this webinar was recorded, so it will be posted on our event webpage and the opportunities webpage by tomorrow, but after the conclusion of this webinar. Without further ado, I would like to personally thank everybody for joining today's call. I hope that you found it informative and we answered some of your questions at the same time. I would also like to thank the other panelist speakers that have joined me today, Dr. Jasmine Bruno, Dr. Kathy Monkfold, Lauren Hershey, Ryan Camella, Michelle Olgers, and Marina Middleton. I would also like to thank especially Dr. Keenan Roberts for joining us today from USB and providing some potential match opportunities for potential applicants here today. Without further ado, thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you're joining us from. And if you need anything further, please don't hesitate to contact us afterwards. Thank you so much.